And we are live. Welcome everybody to Where's Your Heart? Today is Monday. You already know what it is. Thank you so much for tuning in. We got a really wonderful show for you guys today. Many of you all who have children or in the classroom are going to be able to relate to the topic that we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about back to school. And we have two amazing guests that are going to be talking about not only what their experience is like, but how that fits into the larger system, how that fits into how people are feeling and experiencing what's happening in the world right now. So we are super excited to be able to bring this conversation to you all today. And as always, Where's Your Heart is a place where we champion vulnerability as a core human strength. And we appreciate all of you all who are looking, who are viewing, who are listening, giving comments, feedback. We've had so much of that over the past few weeks. And as we're growing, I know I'm speaking for Royce right now, but just there's so much there and there's so much richness in your participation. So thank you so much. Now is the time that if you think people need to hear a vulnerable conversation where we're championing vulnerability, please share, please sign up, please start a watch party. This is the chance to proliferate our message of vulnerability to the world. So that's enough of Torian's commercial.
Yeah. I'm gonna keep going on the commercial.
Keep going, man. Keep going.
All
Keep
right.
going.
So, I mean, just a note about how today came about. Are you doing your sharing thing? This is the time, man. This is when you get to share.
I get to share it for the week.
Yeah, no, I mean put the links places.
Yes, you're right. See, we do have programming. I just forgot about that.
We're learning.
I just forgot about that.
So our two guests today, like Torian and I were chatting last week, and we're like, what about a show about back to school? We're seeing a lot about back to school. And it was one of those like, okay, so who do we bring on? And then it dawned on us like two folks who constantly ask great questions. So that's where our guests came from today. You've seen their questions and comments in the stream before. And a note about sharing today. We're asking people to go to our YouTube channel, go to YouTube and search Where's Your Heart 2020. If you don't put the 2020 on there, the list is too damn long. So Where's Your Heart 2020, and share the link off of there to today's live stream. We're gradually moving to YouTube as our primary source of getting this thing out there. So you can do us a huge favor by sharing over there. The comments that you post on YouTube, by the way, show up in our little boxes here, so we can highlight you on here the same way as we've been doing on Facebook, all that stuff. Okay, so I should transition to gratitude real quick here.
Keep rolling. I got you.
You good?
I got you. I'm still going, but I got you. I got you on gratitude.
Well, and I think that's the first point that I come to is gratitude for our guests today, which is really about gratitude to our listeners. People have been engaging the topics. They had last week as we talked about colorism, it was really ridiculous, the feedback that I know I got, and Torian and I were talking about it over the week. And so just thank you guys. It's one thing for two people to sit here and talk about something, or three or four people to sit here and talk about something. The way that we are going to change this country is that we don't keep this conversation to ourselves, that we explore different things, that we bring different perspectives in. So when y'all drop a comment in there that knocks us sideways, it's a good thing. It reminds us that there's a perspective outside the ones we bring to the room. So I'm really grateful to all that. How about you, man? What do you
Absolutely. Gratitude for this week. So I've mentioned a few times on the show that in the process of us putting this out and really getting the message of championing vulnerability out there, that I've received some direct feedback from friends, people that I care about, some people that I love. Not everyone is as happy and grateful for the platform. Candidly, we have an Native Black American, Caucasian male. We're talking about vulnerability. So long story short, there was a friend of mine, a person that I love, who we were a bit disconnected. And a lot of it had to do with the show, I believe, and kind of the narrative and centering things around, and this is my interpretation of it, of vulnerability and really not having more of a Black narrative. And so we had a chance to reconnect this week and talk about a few things. And I think that as things start to dial down a little bit, that's going to happen across the board. But it was really good to kind of rekindle our connection and love and stuff like that, because it was always rooted in that. But we
Yeah.
are in such volatile times right now that, you know, everybody is kind of feeling a certain way and taking certain stances. So it was just really good to reconnect with them and talk and just laugh and just, be friends and be people who care about each other, and still disagree a little bit about the best way forward.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful
Well,
for that. I mean, I'm grateful for those type of relationships.
and I like one of the things I hear out of there is how important solidarity really is.
Mm,
Like
yes.
that, and at a time when there's nationwide trauma being brought to the forefront, solidarity. Like I've mentioned this in our first couple episodes. Like my question to Torian is, "Why the fuck are you talking to me, man?" Like I don't understand it. I'm gonna roll with it because I love you, and these conversations are amazing.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, like respect for what solidarity means, and also respect for the kind of conversations that we are having.
right.
That yeah, vulnerability in the long run is the thing that's the skill we got to practice. Uh, Catching people giving their shout outs. We got Harris and Cyril and Penny saying hi. Good
Yeah,
to see y'all in
yeah.
here.
Regular
Um,
listeners, there's Wilshire,
yeah,
Penny Bassett. Absolutely. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate it. We love it. All your comments, chiming in, sharing. It's really important. I mean, that's what we create this space for. So
yeah.
thank you guys for chiming in.
So, are you ready? You
I'm
want
ready,
to?
man.
You
Let's
have?
let's
Do you have
jump.
a last week now?
Let's jump right. I mean, I think our last week now really ties into the topic of the conversation for today, which is back to school. I mean, if we
Yeah,
think about what's happening in the world right now, all the things we've been talking about, social unrest, pandemic, but now we have this litmus test of people, of children that are going back to school.
yeah.
And we're in a place where no one really knows what this is going to look like, what it should look like. How do you move forward? What's the best things for children? What's the best things for teachers? Is learning really happening? All these different things that talk around this conversation. So my last week now would really tie directly into our guests because they have so much to say. Because one, they're passionate. Two, they're amazing educators. And three, they have so much to share just from their experience that, I would want to just kind of bring them in and we can start the dialogue from there.
I mean, so when those things that you mentioned, um, oh, like I have such reactions to it. Like the so I guess I'll share this story.
Yeah.
The I didn't really so I flunked out of college, my bachelor's degree. I got diagnosed my last semester there with attention deficit disorder. So this was mid 90s. Most of my high school and primary grades those were in the 80s. As a white kid, as a white boy, um, I'm the person that system should have benefited the most. And this for me is the constant thing that I have to keep putting in front of people is that system failed me miserably. And if it failed me miserably, because that they shouldn't have been overlooking the fact that I was completely incapable of following in a normed classroom environment that way. If that system failed me as a white man, the person for whom this whole system was built, the person who benefits the most from this whole system, how badly is it failing kids of color? How badly is it failing women? How badly is it failing everybody else? Uh, and that's, I think, I can't escape that. That's the state of our system. And then we bring in the notion that we live in this country that constantly professes to say children are our futures, children are so important, and yet we pay our teachers crap. Our budget for schools is nothing compared to our budget for defense. Um, and the way we treat our schools, they're basically glorified childcare. And that is complete bullshit. Like that's what's driving the current back to school push is people are like,
Mm,
we can't handle having our kids at home. We want our childcare back. And there's a bigger pile of bullshit to sit that alongside the notion that kids are our future and kids are the most important thing to us. It exposes the lie that these are not what's most important to us.
mm,
We are worshiping the almighty dollar, and everything about this country is going after that. So when we have this education, we have to realize that this is part of a cultural conversation, a cultural change that is underway in this country that we have to address. Um, okay, well, that's my I'm gonna step off that soapbox.
You're off that soap. It was good. I was so engaged, man. Listen, and we have all kind of people chiming in to it that are kind of,
Oh, hair.
like, so we have Patricia. Patricia and I, we used to work together back in the day. My man
Yeah.
Mark, my F3 brothers chiming in. We got Becky Nelson saying hello, and then Harris was saying like, hey, some of the
More,
things that you're saying are good points, right?
but Harris is, yeah, more money towards prisons than education. And
Mm,
when we reach that point as a country, we are fuckered. Like,
mm,
let's be real clear. That can't happen. That, oh, and private prisons. Like, there's the worst part. People are profiting off of our propensity to put people, to remove their rights as human beings.
mm.
Um, that that doesn't work. It doesn't work. Um,
So why do you think
anyway,
that? Why do you think that's the case? Because so let me back up a little bit. As a
yeah,
person who worked in education, I worked for the world's largest learning company at one point in my life. I had a great experience there, but I had an opportunity really to work more in higher education. And as a person who I'm a first generation college graduate in my family, so I actually, even though I
yeah,
was marginally above average at best student, I have benefited a lot from the educational system here in the United States. But I
thank
do
God.
know that there are a lot of inequities that were there. So my parents, and I don't even know if this was intentional, um, but they made it a point to make sure that my sister and I had the education that they didn't have.
Yeah,
And that was probably the one thing that they ever agreed on in their life. But it was one of the most important things too, because it has opened up a lot of different doors for me. But I also understand and know that because I went to school in Chicago as well as in the suburbs, and there were very distinct differences in the
yeah,
educational experience, in the instruction, and things of that nature. So I'm very, very excited to have this conversation today around this because it's one that needs to be had, especially since the litmus test of the efficacy of the system, I believe, is being pushed right now. And the people who are at the center of that are what? The educators. They're the
yeah,
people who are actually spending the time with the children in K through 12 and really investing in the future of our country. So
yeah,
I don't think there's any better moment to have a conversation around this, especially with everything that has happened with society and the social aspects, as well
yeah,
as COVID-19. And then, we have a huge, I would argue, the biggest election in American history coming up in the next few months. So there's a lot to talk about.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, do you want to introduce? Are
Yeah,
you
let's
ready?
let's let's just jump right in. So,
All right.
so we have two guests today, and many of you all who watch the show have seen our flyer that went out and talked about the guests that we're going to have. So, I would like to introduce a friend of mine. We met, boy, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. We've only seen each other twice in person. Now that I think about it, but we met at a conference, a conference called Global Minded. I was the board chair for Global Minded, that's based out of Denver, Colorado. So, shout out to my girl Kara Carter, my older sister, amazing human being. I love her to death. Um, and we immediately connected around transformation in education. And one of the things that stood out to me about her right away was how passionate she was
Yeah,
about education. Like, she lives and breathes this stuff so much so that we've actually had conversations about her getting into politics and educational policy in the state where she's from and really making a huge impact. So, Susan Cintra is the person that I am so enthralled to introduce to the show. Welcome to Where's Your Heart?
Hello,
Hey, hey, hey,
hello.
hey, hey.
You totally got that wrong, though. We did not meet at Global Minded. We
That,
met at ISTE.
that wasn't ISTE. You're right. You're
Uh-huh,
right. You're
in
right. You're right. That
Philadelphia.
wasn't ISTE.
Look,
But that was when
Global
ISTE was
Minded was
in
the
Denver, though,
second time.
right?
No, it was in Philadelphia. I met you in Philadelphia. And then Global
You're right.
Minded was in
Right.
Denver. That was
You're
the
right.
second
Thanks,
time.
thanks for
But
calling me out in
see, I
public.
love how he
I
Yeah, you're
appreciate
welcome.
you calling me out in public.
You're
and
welcome. Anytime.
I
Anytime I
mean,
get
look, man, she's giving you a pass on not telling you it's time to run for office. I mean, that's really what's happening
That's it.
here.
Well, there you
Office.
go.
It's
That's
time.
true.
It's time.
That's on my list.
So I'm yeah, I get to introduce our another guest for today. She's also, like both of our folks, lifelong educators. she went from teacher to principal, and it was so neat. We started doing a guest prep process. A big shout out to Carrie Hernandez from last week for telling us you are not being responsible about this. So thank
Yes.
you. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Um, but it was so neat to hear our second guest talk about what it was like for her to be shaping lives in a school district of underprivileged kids, where 99% of these kids are on free lunch programs, where you've got a huge diversity in the population. Um, and oh, gosh, just like there was so much richness in everything she had to say. So I'm just going to shut up. She's working on her first novel, she said, by the way. I can't wait to read it. And
Okay.
so, like, look for great things from this human too.
Yes.
So let's bring Jeanine Rogers on here.
Jeanine Rogers, my
Hey
sorority
guys.
sister of Zeta Phi Beta. Yes, I
Hi.
love her so much.
Hey.
Hey,
Thanks
hey.
for having me.
Well, thank you all for being on. So, we hope we did you all justice in setting up this topic of back to school. But yeah, let's jump right in. I mean, what are some of the things that you all are faced with right now in this back to school process?
Royce, I think you came out the gate swinging, and I was proud because I was in the background like, yeah, tell them. Everything you said was on point. But I actually, we're dealing with such a new time right now. It's such an unconventional time that we're all in, and truly we're all novices right now. Everyone is a first year teacher, a first year principal. Even parents are relearning how to parent in this time because no one's ever been an educator in the middle of a pandemic. No one's had to do everything online. And so
that's why we're getting so much pushback. Like, we are resistant to change. You know, if we have food, water, shelter, and meaningful social interaction, we don't want change. That's our lizard brain that, made the human race a thing. So yeah, we're pushing back against real shit, but you're nailing it. Yeah. Like, we're all first year teachers. We're first year parents right now. Everything's new.
Yeah.
Everything's new and different and terrifying and uncertain, and all of those things wrapped up together. Like, we don't know entirely what we're doing, but I'm going to keep it optimistic and hope that we get an opportunity out of this instead of a total negative backlash, which is hard to do when you are faced with, like what you said a second ago about us being the childcare, the glorified babysitters. That's how we feel a lot of the time.
So
and we're not.
Tell me a little bit more about that, Susan. Glorified childcare. How does that play into what's happening right now for you as a teacher?
So right now we have, I mean, when our district made the decision a difficult decision, and it is a difficult decision for everybody involved, because teachers, what we are getting ready to go into is the absolute hardest thing that we'll probably have to do in our careers. It is harder to teach online. It's harder to figure out how to do this. It's a total mind shift. But there was, when that conversation was happening, there was a lot of backlash, and it's been not just in my area, but around the country. Send the kids back to school, send the kids back to school. And I get it, because it's how our society is structured. We are the backbone to how everything functions, because you send your kids to school while you go to work, and that's how you make your living. And teachers have become everything to kids, which is a great responsibility, but it's heavy to carry.
And just to add to that, Susan, it's slightly unfair as well for teachers that have to carry that burden. And it's different in different neighborhoods. If where I work, it's high poverty, as Royce said, 99% free and reduced lunch. Almost all of my parents are essential workers, which means they don't have the opportunity to sit at home and help their child with remote learning, versus a more affluent neighborhood where a mom or dad can afford to stay home or work from home versus being essential. It just totally divides the opportunities available for children to learn.
I mean, how the hell are you supposed to do digital? How are you supposed to do remote working when you don't even have good internet?
Right. Yeah. We're trying to figure that out in rural spots. Like, I'm in Kentucky, and some of our we're figuring out how to send hotspots home, but there's a fear that some of those hotspots aren't even going to work in some of those areas. So yeah, it's definitely complicated.
Torian, you're muted.
Sorry. Tell us a little bit, Susan, about your demographic, like what you're faced with. Because you said you're in Kentucky, you're in the rural area. Paint us a picture of what you're faced with.
So we're kind of an urban X area is what we call it. So my county is pretty large, and we are South Central Kentucky. We have an urban area in the center of town, or the center of the county, and then you go out into the outskirts and you've got more farms and rural areas where the infrastructure for the internet is not nearly what it should be. So we have a mixture of it's a mixture. You've got south end of the county that's more rural, and then the north end of the county is more urban. Still low. We have high poverty rates here. I believe we're everybody is free lunch. We have a program through our school that does that. So it's a lot. We're dealing with a lot and totally different climates of who our kids are.
Yeah.
Jeanine, how about you? I know you gave us a little bit of a taste, but paint us a broader picture if you don't mind.
So where I'm situated, we're about 10 minutes outside of Chicago. So you have the big city urban feel. We do have connectivity, but my district is made up of some students who live in projects, some students who live in single family homes, and essentially there are many families that don't even own computers in their households. When we look for devices and ask families, do you have devices? They said yes if they had a cell phone. But how much can you truly do work and type a paper or respond on a cell phone? So we had to figure out how to provide devices to these families and get them connected if they couldn't get connected, because this isn't their priority. Their priority is survival right now. How do I put food on my table?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it's one of the things that comes up is if we supposedly live in the age of information, that's what everyone wants to tell me. We're living in the information age. Then how the hell is it that high-speed internet is not a public utility? Like
Politics.
I
how.
mean,
Funding.
yeah, yep.
Funding, politics.
It's one of those, like, again, COVID is exposing all of the problems for us in our culture and our society. It's exposing racial injustice. It's exposing marginalization. And here's a way it's exposing the fact that, internet these days is right alongside electricity, gas, and water, like as an essential that we have to figure out how to provide to our population.
Right.
A friend of mine down in Deming, New Mexico he's the IT guy for the district. He's trying to figure out how to set up hotspots on the buses and park the buses in places where people can get to that. Like this is where we're at, folks. This is the kind of just janky rigging that we're trying to figure out.
Well, and in that too, we're trying to figure out. So we are trying to offer one device to each one of our families, right?
Yeah.
So in just trying to figure, like today, I spent time trying to figure out my lesson plans for like the first 2 weeks when we go back, and what's that's even going to look like. But we can't require students to have online class time at the exact same time, because if there are multiple kids in a family, and if they only have the one device that we were able to give them, and assuming that they have internet that's going to work, we have to think about the fact that some of them are going to be in other meetings, and some of them, like other kids, are going to have to use it at different times. So it's learning how to do, and I hate saying this because I feel like teachers have heard this word over and over nonstop, synchronous and asynchronous work together, right? Like, have you seen the memes yet? We're tired of hearing these words. Like, I can't handle it.
I saw one last night that was hilarious. It was like, why don't you just say that means learn by yourself or learn with someone? Come
Right.
on.
I saw that
Break
with
it
you.
down.
Right? Exactly. But trying to figure that out and rethink the way that we do teaching in general has been a mind shift. I mean, I think it's the right thing that we have to do in this moment to keep everybody safe, no doubt, and to take care of our families and our communities and all that, no doubt. But it is definitely a challenge, and it's hard.
So I was struck like I'm struck by the two of you partially because like you obviously even after almost each of you almost 2 decades teaching in public schools, like you still have this my parents are teachers, just to let the audience like I've been a teacher off and on. It You still have what I know as like the true heart of teachers. Like you just have this love and passion for doing this with these kids. And I'm always like amazed and awed because I know what hell y'all go through with the bureaucracy and then also parents. But like what's the opportunity here? Like, cause y'all are such positive, amazing, like, oh, we're gonna figure this shit out and we're gonna get to fix some shit while we're at it. Like I heard Susan mentioning earlier, like the classroom size.
Yeah.
Do you want to, and I want to hear
Yeah.
from Jeanine on this too, but yeah, go.
Okay, so we have, in order to try and figure out, like my high school has around 2,100 students. Normally, in a normal typical year, our class size varies between 33 kids, like around 33 kids is pretty much the max. But that's a lot of kids. And then you have 5 to 6 classes depending on the schedule each year. So you're talking a class load of around 150 to 170 kids each year that you're in high school. So I'm grading papers, I'm an English teacher. So it's a constant workload. This year, we've been able to offer online classes. So some teachers are teaching an online platform. Even if we were meeting in person, some kids have chosen to still be able to do online classes. And that has reduced some of our class sizes. So because we have to socially distance and based on our classroom size, I can fit 16 kids in my room. So I'm doing all in person, right? Which means I can have 16 kids. And I remember years ago, my first year teaching, I had a random class with 17 kids in it. And we got so much stuff done. Like as a first year teacher who didn't know what the hell I was doing, like I moved mountains with those kids. And I'm so like pumped to do that now.
And I want to jump on that for a second. From the outside, people who are not in the education system, there's a lot of perspective that says education is about getting our kids the right information. And I want to say from a teacher's perspective that it's complete bullshit. You are about the creation of powerful human beings. You are about the creation of somebody you entrust with the vote, the most important thing in this country, supposedly. So like when you talk about that, like how do you, what are you excited about, I guess, this year about the people that you get to co-create?
So you get, when you're in a small class environment like that, you get to the rapport that you can build with the kids and the conversations that you can have. And that's where the learning happens, right? Like Tori and I have talked before about business because he's in this whole business world and how he keeps saying, you know, education is a business and yada, yada, yada. But we're not producing the same things. We're producing humans. And that's totally different responsibility and one that's not to be taken lightly.
So let me unmute myself
Okay.
now. Um, maybe, but I also would say that business, and this is my narrative to business leaders and executives as well, should be about producing amazing human beings as well. I don't think the end outcome should be any different, right? It's all about how you measure success and how do you measure profitability. So I'm not against the business aspect of it. I'm not against the profit aspect of it. However it's measured, it's just making sure that it's more than just the bottom line. So that's the challenge that I have with a lot of.
See, that's that translation into education. Like, what are you talking about? What do you say as the profit and the bottom line of the classroom? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Okay.
You got it, because we're talking about people. We're talking about humans. We're talking about babies.
But businesses are made up of human beings.
But human beings who are getting a return on their profit or a return on their investment, it's about money.
Well, that's a shareholder, but the typical employee is not a shareholder of the organization that they work for.
True.
Which is a challenge. I mean, that's an issue too. That's something that we need to talk about, shareholders and stakeholdership and what that actually means. But I would argue that there should be more merging toward the middle. It should always be focused on people. That's always been my contention. It always will be.
Yeah. Like, is there like my takeaway from this awesome back and forth is like, no, I mean, it is because is that it's a profit shouldn't be a dirty word, right?
Yep.
Even as somebody who leans more on the socialist end of things, I don't like there's certain businesses I'm like, yeah, profit's not a bad thing.
Right.
And when we forget that we are humans, not machines, I think that's the part I hear from Torian, is that like that can't happen, man. We're
Yeah.
human beings.
Yeah, and I would definitely say I'm a capitalist more so than a
We
socialist.
know.
Yes,
We
but I
know.
have no problems with cap. Well, capitalism is not a bad word. It's how it's actually being practiced, right?
Yeah.
So I don't get caught in the theory of things. I look at the practical, what's actually happening, and unfettered capitalism, how we've been practicing it, is not sustainable. Pretty much anyone with any level of reason understands that we're dealing with limited resources, limited time, et cetera, et cetera. So we need to reimagine and recalibrate those things. But I think it's the same thing that's happening with schooling too. So I'm curious from Jeanine's standpoint as a principal, because you have a macro view of what's happening at your school. What are some of the challenges that you're seeing?
Well, I was watching the tennis ball go back and forth for a moment there. The biggest thing, but I love the conversation because education does seem to be a business, especially right now when you're looking at the way 45 just said that teachers are essential workers. That's a complete business, mind frame. But what I'm looking at now is, and what I've always tried to do, is make sure that we're looking at teachers as people, as parents as people. We're looking at students as people, because we can get in these roles and we can get pigeonholed into, my job is just to teach you. I don't need to know you. I don't need to care about what your family is going through. But essentially, everything you bring into that classroom, whether it's from the teacher standpoint or the student standpoint, is going to affect that child's learning. And I agree 100%. We are building people. As a teacher, I didn't teach my students because I wanted them to get a great test score. It was because I wanted them to grow up and one day be able to look back and say, maybe I didn't understand that lesson she was trying to teach me right now, but I see how it'll affect my life. And at the end of the day, that's what education should be doing. It should be changing lives, and it should be preparing students for life, not to take a test, not so that parents can go to work. That's a convenience that happens as a result of it.
Yeah.
So I really try and do everything I can for my staff first and my students. We always say students first, but what good are the staff if they're not in a healthy state of mind to teach?
Oh, that's so true.
Yeah, mental health. How are y'all?
Yes.
How are y'all taking care of yourselves? How are you taking care of each other? Okay, yeah, right. How are you taking care of your kids? Like,
Where are those drinks?
Right. Where's the wine?
Yeah.
Well, I can say,
That's an inside joke for all the viewers. That's an inside joke.
One thing we were privileged to do, because we're not in the big city, is we were able to designate a specific amount of our budget for a mental health specialist just to work with our students and help them through those challenging times. But right now, we're all coming back from trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma. And so mental health is huge. And so when I talk to my teachers, the first conversation is, how are you? What's happening with you? And they're worried, bless their hearts, they're worried about, oh my God, am I going to be ready? What about my lessons? And I'm like, all that will work out. Let's make sure you're okay first. And so just trying to put programs in place to help them.
I'm struck so much by that, because I talk, and one of the things I talk constantly with about with my clients about is that you have to be able to stand at the center, and that's what a classroom is. Like, I don't believe in top-down learning. I don't believe in teachers bringing all the information into the classroom. It's co-learning when we're at our best, but still, ultimately, as a teacher, you are standing in the place of responsibility, and if you can't stand there because your legs are broken and ripped out from under you, how's this going to work? And Harris's comment, unfortunately, there are statewide school systems that are teaching for test scores and competencies. That was one of the things. I mean, how the hell does this work? If your pay as a teacher, because this is some states do this, your pay as a teacher is dependent upon those test scores.
Yeah.
And now we're going to drop you into, oh, you're a first year teacher again. We know this is what's happening. We're going to put you all online, or worse yet, we're going to put you in a petri dish, where everyone, a huge portion of the class gets to get sick every week. We're not going to have a class size issue because half the class is going to be out sick. Like, how the hell does that work?
Well, so let me take it back to business as the resident business person.
Here you go.
But it's the same thing. I mean, the argument that you're making in systems of
Yeah.
education is the exact same argument that has to be made in business, right? You're
Ooh.
standing in a place where you have an amazing opportunity, almost even a duty, to affect the people that are around you. So it's no different.
Yeah.
It's just that we've taken these words, the construct around the words, and said, well, this is profit, therefore this is bad. This is education, therefore this should be this. When we're dealing with human beings every single time, there are different stages in life. They may have different goals, but you're still dealing with human souls that are complex, that bring everything of who they are to where they are. And this is one of the things that I talk to my clients about, because for some reason we think that when we get to a certain level of success, that we don't need a coach, that we don't need feedback, that we don't need a trusted mirror in front of us to feed back things that may be a little bit different. And I think that needs to be it needs to be integrated into every aspect of the human experience. And the problem is that we have silos and we think that it's different. That ties directly back to education. When I think about the teachers, too, that were very influential in my life, these were people that met me where I was. They stretched me when I needed to be stretched. They gave me candorous feedback that I hated. I didn't even understand it at the time, but now I appreciate it because it was what I needed to hear, not necessarily what I wanted to hear. To me, it's no different. It shouldn't be. It is different, but it shouldn't be any different when we're talking about a for-profit organization. Because I know, Susan, you actually shared a story a few days ago when you were talking about one of your students who made a really big impact on your life. So can you share that?
Tee that up.
Which one are we talking about now at this point? I've gotten so many. Shayla or my kids?
The kids.
Your kids.
The kids. Okay. So I had two boys who were in my class. It's been several years ago. And they were two of the best writers I ever had. Both of them incredibly talented, passionate, awesome kids who worked their butts off when they were in my class. But the problem is they were headed down a road that we knew was dangerous for them. So another teacher and I here at school, we would talk to them daily about, like, if you keep acting like this, you're going to end up in trouble. This is going to be bad. And it was like headed down that path. And it was the path that was, like, you talked to Royce earlier about, well, you didn't say it directly, but the school to prison pipeline. That's where they were headed. Right. And so they ended up, they finished the year with me. The next year, I think they were put in an alternative school. So in a couple of years after they were out of high school, I got a call that there had been a drug deal gone wrong, and they were involved in a shooting where someone was killed in the crossfire, and it was one of my kids who pulled the trigger. And now both of them are spending a 29-year sentence in jail. But when I would have these conversations with them in class, they would say, like one day, one of them said, Miss Cintra, the only thing that a Black kid can do is rap, play ball, or sell drugs. And they believed that to the core of who they were. And when they said that, that sort of reframed every single thing that I thought about what their experiences were. And so when I went to visit him one time in jail, I asked him again, I said, do you still believe that? And he said no, but there's no way I would have seen it back then. And so having to watch them and watch the system and be a part of the system that fed them this lie that that's all that they could do, and reinforced it. Like when we look at our teaching staff at this school, we have gotten, like, just this year, we're hiring more educators of color. There's definitely a shortage of educators of color in Kentucky. And so that's I've partnered with one of our universities here, and we're trying to do a pipeline to build that pathway from high school into college and working on a couple different things with that. But that's because it's such a huge problem. They don't see teachers in front of them who look like them. And because they don't see people who are successful, that's why, like, back here on my board, these are some of the guest speakers that I have come to my class. Torian's right there. There he is. So I try. Yeah, he's the wall of fame. Yeah. So I try and bring in people that are going to mimic that and show them that what they see is not the only options that they have. And I don't know, it's sort of become a passion of mine since I lost them. I count them as like they're still here and I can still talk to them. But 29 years for a stupid mistake, not like a choice, is a lot. It's a lot. And losing a life is a lot. It's just a lot.
Yeah, Susan, oh my goodness, you said a lot right there. And I was thinking so many things in the middle of that. I've had my share of students, even lost a student to violence, because sometimes you do have one you don't reach. But what it made me think about is how sometimes even us as educators have been guilty of having low expectations of our students when they don't come from a certain area or family or lifestyle. And so I had a child this past year and we had that conversation. He was an 8th grader. What do you want to be when you grow up? He came from a family where a family member had been shot and killed right down the street from the school. And I knew his background. And he said, I want to be a business owner. I said, okay, tell me about that. And he said, oh, I want to own a strip mall. and I'm going to have all these different shops. I said, okay, you need a business plan. And he said, yeah, right. He said, I'm going to manage that. I said, you don't want to work in the shops? He said, no, I'm not a people person, Miss Rogers. I can't do that. I need to be the manager. I said, okay. But he was having a lot of behavior issues. So I said, well, let's talk about how you deal with difficult people and let's work through that. Because if you're going to be a manager, you're going to have some people who maybe get on your nerves and you can't curse them out. Like, that's why you're in my office now. And so we started having these conversations. But what I loved about this kid is afterwards we had this great connection. And every time I saw him, it didn't matter if he was in trouble. He could be cursing up and down the hallway. If I said, hey, come here, he's like, okay, because he heard something in me, I believe, that helped him to see that he can go beyond where he is. Mm-hmm. And so when we look at our children, we have to be able to say, I know this is what you see, but this is not the extent of what is available to you, and open their eyes. That's our responsibility, I believe, as educators.
Whew. That's powerful. So I have a question, then I have a story to piggyback that. How can an educator or administrator do that if their thinking or their experiences are myopic? That's number one. And let me give you my story to that. So I started off the show with talking about my parents, and probably the one thing that they've ever agreed on was my sister and I needed to have a better education than they did. And so going to high school in the western suburbs of Chicago, I graduated from a fairly affluent school in a fairly affluent area. And I remember I played sports. Track was probably more my thing. But there are a lot of guys around me who were getting letters and scholarship offers, right? And I remember sitting in the locker room and they're opening up all these letters and stuff. And I'm like, man, like, how are you guys getting this? And I'm not. And I was pretty good. I mean, I'm actually really good. And they were like, well, have you taken your ACT? And I'm like, what the hell is an ACT? I didn't know what an ACT or SAT was. I mean, because my parents didn't take them. I didn't even know. And this was like my junior, maybe even senior. No, it was my junior year, right? Where everybody had been taking them, had been prepping for them and stuff like that. Yeah. And so I remember going to my guidance counselor, and I'm not going to throw this person under the bus. But I remember going to the guidance counselor and saying, hey, I want to go to a big school. I want to play sports. I want to do this. And I remember this person, I don't even want to give their gender, pulling up my transcripts and saying, hey, I've heard some good things. A lot of people like you. You're pretty social. I've always loved social studies and stuff. But, you're pretty much a little bit above average student. Why don't you just consider a trade school or the military? Now, I will never forget. I was mad because I knew the people who were getting the letters, and I'm like, I'm better, not even just as good. I'm better than them, right, in a lot of different areas. But the fact that they shut my dreams down right away, and this is in a great school, is a perfect example of low expectations. Now, fortunately, I had a really good track coach, Coach Steve Edwards, who's one of my mentors today, who always had higher expectations of me. And when I didn't meet them, let me know in a positive way that I could do better. But Jeanine, that is so true, especially when you talk about Native, Black American, or boys of color that need to see that. Because if it weren't for him, this is Coach Steve Edwards, I wouldn't have gone to college. There wouldn't have been this exploratory background. I wouldn't have graduated from Harvard Business School. I wouldn't have graduated from Tsinghua University in Beijing, China, and all these things. And it was because one person saw a much bigger version of Torian than Torian could actually see at that period of time in his life. So low expectations is real. It's real. It's real.
Well, and see, even that story though, Torian, reemphasizes the narrative of what my boys heard, because that came from your coach, right? So someone that sports, that whole idea of sports.
True.
You know
That's
what
true.
I'm saying? Which is good, but the problem, which is what you started to say before your story, is how do we address that with people, with teachers who don't see it? And you know, over and over, we see statistics of Black and brown kids who are not identified as gifted and talented when they're younger because they don't have teachers who see them as gifted and talented, when you have a disproportionate number of white kids who are listed as gifted and talented, right?
In spite of being a failure as a student.
And it's not even about being
Right.
gifted and talented. And this is the same thing
Yeah.
when I talk to organizations about hiring. It's gifted and talented at what, right?
Exactly.
Because
Yeah.
for me, I believe that everybody is a genius at something. I do, right? But are you in the right environment? Or are you in the right frame of mind to actually nurture, develop, and identify the things that you're a genius at? And it took, because I had a chip in fact, I still have a chip on my shoulder, to be honest with you, because oftentimes I don't feel good enough. You know, it's code switching. I've done all these wonderful things, and still in job interviews and stuff is still going above and beyond. And I know from a track record standpoint that I can go against, or at least have done and accomplished more than people that I'm going against. But you still always have to do that much more. And it becomes tiring. But you're right. Being able to see someone outside of a coaching environment is important.
Right.
It is. Now, Coach Edwards is way more than just a coach, but I
Yeah,
know
yeah.
exactly what you're saying, because
Yeah.
you're right. It has to be more than running a ball or dancing or rapping. And not that I have an issue with any of those things, but how do you identify talent? How do you identify genius? And it goes back to the beginning of our conversation. If we don't have teachers and educators that are, for Jeanine, that are courageously vulnerable enough to show up in a healing space for themselves, how can you create that environment for those precious souls that you have the amazing, awesome, audacious responsibility of helping to form?
Yeah.
In my school, we call them courageous conversations. And so we've been learning to have more of those. And so if I had met your counselor and I had to speak with her, we would have to sit down and have a courageous conversation, because that could have gone so wrong. You know, in a child with no support, that could have led to suicide, that could have led to drug addiction, that could have led to so many things. And who are
Not for me,
you?
though. I have way too much ego for those things.
Not
No,
for
just saying.
Torian. Not for you. I'm glad you made it out. But you know, I mean, you have to confront it. I do believe that's a conversation you have to have. And unfortunately, this is not a popular opinion, but we're on Where's Your Heart, so I can say things that are not popular.
Ooh,
I
like
don't
it.
think everyone who's a teacher should be a teacher.
That's right.
Period.
Ooh.
Everyone does not have the heart for it. And I've worked with people who don't have the skill, but they have the heart. And I can work with you if you have the heart, because we can teach skills.
Yes.
But if your heart is shut off, if your heart is cold, if your approach to children is these kids are in here doing whatever, or that kid is not going to make it because his family, you don't need to be here. And I will usher you into whatever field you'd like to go into.
Right.
But the first thing would be to say something, and then I think, show people what they're actually saying. I went to a workshop once, and they put up these images of different nationalities and different attire. and said, make your first, share your first impression of this person. And it was so crazy how people looked at people with lighter skin or different outfits on and said, oh, they're educated, they're smart, they're gifted, they're that. And it was totally untrue. It was our biases. So you have to expose that so that you can at least start to reflect and say, oh, I didn't realize that was who I was. Now I'm acknowledging it. Now I can change it. And if that doesn't work, we can find you another job.
Mhm.
And Kim is co-signing what you said. She said she's seen the exact same things, that people just need to pack it up as soon as possible.
Yeah. You see that all the time here too. Yeah.
So let me be the contrarian here. Is that
You the contrarian?
well, I want to look at things holistically. I want to look at things holistically always, right?
Go ahead.
So is that necessarily the teacher's fault, or could it be a teacher that's been a part of a system that doesn't work, and over time they just become jaded? Not giving an excuse, but trying to have a deeper understanding of how people may show up. Could that be part of it?
Yeah, 100%. That's part of it, because I feel like, I will say this too. I mean, 17 years in the classroom, there have definitely been times when I have not done my best for kids that I know needed my best. And you're jaded by the system because you're stuck in the system. I mean, you and I have talked about cogs and wheels and all that stuff, but like, we're stuck in this system, and it hurts when you can't change it. And so you shut down for a while, and in that shutdown, you sort of put walls up between you and the kids, and it becomes it's not always the best outcome.
It's kind of like a relationship.
I agree 100%. It can be like a relationship. Susie, you make such a good point, because it's real that we encounter these walls. And I'll just be transparent. This COVID and education in the middle of it, I've put a wall up a couple times, and I had to take a step back and just say, listen, what's your purpose? Your purpose is not to, argue with this person or that person. You have to look at the big picture. You're still here for the children, for the teachers, and whatever you need to do or learn for yourself. That's my perspective. But everyone isn't that reflective. And so after years and years of dealing with the system, you're going to experience some burnout. And that'll look like, I don't really care for kids, which they might, but they may just be to the point of frustration.
Right. Yeah, I've been there before. And I would say too that in all of, I guess, a positive thing in all of what I'm seeing, some of those teachers, I feel like, that I know experience that jaded burnout stuff right now in this moment. I've spent the last 2 weeks in our building working with teachers and seeing how they're preparing for what's coming, the virtual piece, right? And they're having to rethink the way that they do everything. And they're like, they have to, like, there's no other way around it. They can't be complacent. And so I know it's like an extra struggle for them, but I'm also excited to see what they come up with on the flip side of it.
That's the opportunity.
The opportunity, right?
I mean, that's, opportunity. Like, oh God, like, there's the best part, because we can't ignore these things right now, because COVID is like putting its finger on the crack and going, and now we're going to just break the whole fucking wall down with this crack, right? Like, there it goes. So because of that, there are amazing opportunities. Like, we are undergoing a revolution as a society right now. And I haven't had hope in the last 10 years during my wake up process. I honestly haven't had hope that we might do this peacefully. I thought, I honestly believed as a society we were headed toward a civil war, because this stuff, I didn't see people being able to fix this. But here we have this damn pandemic that is breaking us in these other ways, rather than just saying civil war is the change. And so we're seeing, like, are you kidding me? We might actually get to change how we do education by putting the focus back on it this way. Oh my God, a peaceful revolution? Could we do this? So there's I think the hopeful question. What's something you're excited about? Each of you respond to this. What are you excited about personally? Like, where's your heart just like jump out and go, oh my God, I can't wait to try this?
Okay, so I'll go first. I'm kind of excited about this. Even this, what we're doing now. It's like acting. Teaching is a tad bit like acting. And so I think it brings out more of your personality when you have to do a Zoom for instruction. I'm seeing teachers decorate their whiteboards and set up their virtual classroom. And I'm excited to see how they can now try and deliver content in a new way. We have to engage kids. Kids have been at home for 5 months, watching TV, playing video games. So we have to be equally attractive to them. And so I really believe that it's an exciting time. I almost could go back into the classroom. I'm knock on wood, I don't want to, but I'm just saying this is exciting for me. So even as a principal, I made my own classroom and I'm trying to figure out ways to engage teachers and students, even if it's just something fun. We've talked about making videos. We can't meet in person to do back to school nights. So now let's do a video. And how much fun would it be for the kids to see us dance and present information in funny clothing? And
y'all gonna get a TikTok channel, aren't
There
you?
you go. There you go.
I've never
Who says we
TikTok.
don't have one.
Hey,
But you,
we could.
but you know what's so interesting about what you're saying? Those attributes that you're talking about are
Mhm.
what children naturally do.
Mhm.
Because you're talking about curiosity, you're talking about playfulness, you're talking about the things that are almost educated out of them, and then they move into the business world, and then becomes even more static, right? And then this,
Vulnerability.
exactly, it's vulnerability. It's trying
because
new things.
We're gonna be wrong. We're gonna fuck some of this up, and it's
Yes.
good.
Yep.
Because
Good.
how we fail as teachers, how we fail as examples for these kids, and
Yes.
going, shit, well, that didn't
Yes.
go the way I wanted it
Yes.
to.
Yes.
All right, guys, we got to try something else because this didn't work. Like,
And
that's
real.
what vulnerability.
And here's the
is.
craziest part about it. The most successful companies financially right now, the tech companies, understand that, because
Yep.
innovation is all about consistent failure. That's it. You
Mhm.
try, you break, you learn. You try, you break, you learn. You try, you break, you learn. And what's so interesting is that our education system hasn't moved in that direction. Our political system certainly hasn't moved in that direction, nor has our financial system. So I think that there's an opportunity from an educational standpoint to actually be the litmus test to help move the rest of society forward, if you have those administrators and those educators that want to actually take that challenge. And then, society backs them up with other incentives as well, because I do think other incentives are important.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
go ahead, Royce.
No, I'm just, if we back them up, like, period, there it is. Like,
Yeah, we have
we
to
got
do
to
that.
support.
Well,
So-
that's the thing that I'm excited about, probably, is like, okay, because Tori and I, we fight politics a lot, but with the political thing, I mean,
No, I can't
can
believe
you imagine
that.
that? I know, right? But
It's not my thing. Politics is not my thing.
I know.
I understand it. I just don't buy it. That's all.
See, but that's part of the exciting part of the change. So we do this thing. I've done this thing in my class, which I actually like debuted at the Global Minded thing. But it's a building a movement project, right? So kids look at issues that directly impact them, things that they have to focus on, things that are specific problems to them. And whether that's like there's this damn pothole in the road that I have to run over every single time I'm driving, or the fact that I'm a byproduct of this systemic racism that I see every single day and I have to process that. So whatever the realm is, we focus on a problem within our community, and then they figure out ways and channels of which to fix it or attack it, and they do these plans. I had one student who was a victim of sexual assault, and she turned her project into a whole. She now works for a group of women organizers, the Women's March, right? And she goes around and helps organize these women's marches, because it turned into this whole thing where she created a website that brought attention. She did an education program and talked to kids in our school about what sexual assault was and how ways to prevent it, and ways to report it, and confidential. Like she blew it up, and it became part of where she's headed with her career. So for me, and part of that is the involvement in the political system, that's where I'm going back with these politics, because you have to know who your power holders are, right? So if you're going to try and change something within your community, you have to know who the power holders are. So, and in order to do that, I teach English. So we have to research. You have to learn how to speak well. You have to learn how to build an argument. So I'm teaching all of the things that I have to teach, right? But they're doing stuff with it. And I think that in this moment, in this opportunity, when I can't do face-to-face, it's not lecture, which is not what I do anyway, but it's not like a lecture environment constantly. Kids are going to start moving and changing and seeing that like all the stuff that's happening right now is something that they can impact. Like, I'm going to brag about my child. I call her my daughter of the heart. She's one of my students who graduated 2 years. She's a sophomore now in college. And she went to a teacher's march with us when we stormed the Capitol, right? And she went with me. She just wanted to go and see what it was. And she got the political bug. Now she's running, like she just took on a internship with Amy McGrath's campaign, the opponent to Mitch McConnell.
Yeah.
I know, right? And she's like leading these she led a Black Lives Matter movement here in town. Like she did the whole rally, she and a bunch of other girls from our class. And they made things happen because they saw that process. You know, they went through it. And I think that when you start to see that change, it's called grassroots movements, Torian. That's what we call it in the political.
Oh God!
Listen. We can get back and forth if you want to on this, but I don't plant my flag in the ground with most things.
Look at the time.
No, we stand on this one. We stand on this one.
Oh boy,
I'm gonna plant my flag on this one. That's all. Look, I think that's amazing. I think that's great. I applaud. Right?
Yeah.
Money is not everything, but it is the only thing that is a part of everything. That's all I'm saying.
But you have a collective amount of money when you collectively connect people, not just one person with a lot of money, but a lot of people with money.
Yeah, but that has nothing to do with politics.
Yes, it does. If you can change it, that's what we're talking about, the opportunity for change, my friend. That's what we're doing right now.
Okay. All right. We'll say this for another show because I just fundamentally disagree. I think what did you say?
I said it's turning left.
We got to turn that, Jeanine. What's on the top of your heart right now, Jeanine? That's what we need to hear, not me.
I love Susan's comment because it's turning tragedy into purpose. And I think what we're talking about right now, we are in some tragic times in this country, and we have to turn it. We have to turn it into purpose. There has to be something purposeful that comes out of this. If it's making instruction relevant, let's throw away these. I love history as well, but let's throw away these books with these old white guys in them who did all of this. And let's talk about what's happening on the news. Let's talk about what happened yesterday in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And let's make that, we can teach everything through what's on the news right now. But
hold on, but which news channel though? I mean, there's such an agenda with every news channel. That's the thing.
You have to teach what that agenda is.
But
you those how to think. Right.
I mean, the reference that I just heard from Jeanine, I've seen that what happened in Kenosha, Wisconsin, I've seen on at least 4 or 5 disparate news sources, and that alone gives me the opportunity to teach from it in a classroom, because I don't have to only be concerned about my bias, because here are 5 different versions of this event, and we can actually begin to learn about critical thought through the way the story is told 5 different ways.
Exactly.
And then the second we bring in our history books, now we have, we're only got one of these channels up here. Where are the other 4 channels? How do we get those other channels in front of us?
Right.
Absolutely.
And my question always is, who owns the channels?
And that's
Big Brother.
Yeah, that's a good one. And what's that agenda, right?
Right.
Well, but that's what it comes.
That's a whole other study.
Well, but just like who owns Black Lives Matter, right? I mean, that's a question. It's a scratchy question for a lot of people, but it goes back to, at some point, people are going to expect an ROI, whether it's a news channel, whether it's investment in Black Lives Matter, or Make America Great Again, or whatever slogan people are buying into. It doesn't really matter. And so I think it's great. And I think you guys are absolutely right. It's all about being purposeful right now. Yeah. And so we talked a little bit yesterday about this concept of mirrors and windows that I wanted to kind of come back to, because I think that's really important. I forgot which one of you all kind of talked about it, but
This
Tell
has
us a
got to
little
be
bit
the
about
last topic, yo. We got to close on this.
Yeah, we got to
so-
close on this. So you got to
All
kill
right.
it. This is it. You got to kill it right
We're
now. You
5
got to drop
minutes.
the
No
mic.
pressure.
We're 5 minutes over, yo.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
So windows and mirrors, that's this concept of looking at yourself. So when you see the world only through yourself, what happens in a lot of literature and things that we teach historically is that it's a window, or I'm sorry, it's a mirror. So like this white culture, right? So we teach a lot of white texts, right? With where white people are the center of the story. And even if it's not a white person who's the center of the story, it's
The system is
told
there.
through, and it's told through the perspective of a white person. So
Yeah.
so windows and mirrors, you have to provide your students with opportunities to see both themselves in everything that they talk about, and then see into other perspectives from other people. That's the concept there, and looking at what windows and mirrors are and how we teach different perspectives and provide that opportunity, because like my boys who only saw themselves in those 3 lights, right? We should have been showing them other stuff. We should have been showing them more mirrors of more positive images. You see what I'm saying?
One of my favorite things that I taught when I taught middle school, I taught all subjects, but I brought in, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the film Hidden Colors.
Yeah.
You all heard of that? So and for those of you who don't know, it's just basically a retelling of history and Native African history and everything that's in the history books rewritten, basically. And so as my kids were watching it, we would pause and discuss, and they're like, Miss Rogers, is this true? Like, we were really kings? Like, really this happened? I was like, yes, guys, I'm trying to listen. But they always said we were this and we were that. And so as soon as their eyes were open, it was like I could see the wheels churning, and I could see them saying, like, we have so many possibilities. We don't have to be what I read over here. I'm telling you, I loved it, and I love seeing them that excited, because they, like you said, Susan, the windows and mirrors, you have to be able to see everyone else and value them too. My family, we're like the Rainbow Coalition. I have every that's what we call ourselves. My aunt's Filipino, my cousin's Mexican, I've got white, we've got everybody in the family. So that's been how I've grown up. So I accept everyone, but if you never see anybody who's different than you, you won't learn that. And if you never see anyone who looks like you, who's been successful, you'll never think that you can be that way. So I loved doing that, and I would choose articles and texts that would allow students to do that
exactly
for themselves.
That's the key there.
I'm
variety.
I'm struck right now. My daughter watched the show She-Ra. She's 19, but my kids love anime and stuff. So she watched She-Ra, and she'd been talking about it. I'm just like, all right, fine, I got to check this out. So I started watching the show, and I'm just shocked and floored at, like, internally how first off, how amazing the show is, like, because it's centered on women, of just the huge variety that they have on the screen at any given time. But then also that old lie of, I remember my spouse is a minister, and when she got her first job, it became a large church with 3 women pastors. And one of the council members asked the head pastor, well, I don't know how we're going to have young men grow up to be pastors from our church if they don't see anybody like them up there. And the head pastors, yeah, right. Okay, wait, we're going to stop this bullshit right there. But she looked at them and said, well, all of my pastors growing up were men, and I'm here in front of you anyway. But like how, and so just this notion that we can learn to see ourselves in others even when that face isn't there, but also how important that representation is, especially for traditionally marginalized voices. Because I can't watch this show without hearing from my daughter what it meant to see Glimmer up there on the screen with a body type that wasn't Twigs.
Right.
You know, like, what does this mean to this person? And then for myself to start seeing myself in the female characters. It's not the first time I've had that experience, but just how much that identification is so important and so good for us. There's the windows and mirrors. Like, it's happening constantly. And the second you turn that light on for these kids, man, there ain't no stopping it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, amazing conversation. We
Amazing.
definitely appreciate it, ladies. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We will continue, so stay tuned. We can go back and forth and talk about money and business as
Oh,
long as
boy.
you want tonight. No,
Politics.
politics.
What we do anyway.
But yeah, no, I mean, amazing discussion, and we will bring you guys back for sure because
Yeah.
we can keep going on. And actually, we want to check in a little bit because this is a very monumental time that we're in right now. We're just starting school. This is the beginning of something that no one has had any experience with. So we'd love to kind of check in a few months just to see how things are going, better, worse than you thought, et cetera, et cetera. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you
Definitely.
guys so much.
Thank you.
Put you in the back. All right, my man. How you feeling?
God, are you kidding me?
I know,
Like,
right?
how do we get to do this every week?
I know.
Holy
It's
shit!
not, it's not
dude.
even fair. It's not even fair. Especially once we start monetizing this because it's coming.
Oh my gosh, y'all.
Yeah,
So
that's good, man. That's good.
so chime in, folks. Please share this around. We do, like, we have to have a whole bunch more conversations. One of the things we didn't even get to was this notion that one of the biggest challenges for teachers right now is there's a difference between just straight substituting. You know, I used to hand out worksheets. Now I hand you a Google Doc and tell you to fill it out. There's a big difference between that and like learning the nuances of TikTok and utilizing it in your classroom, because TikTok is very good at certain things. And that's the technological leap that's happening right now. That's what Jeanine was referring to. Or wait,
Yeah.
did Susan say it? One of them,
I can't
one of
remember.
our guests mentioned, you know, we're first year teachers all over again.
Jeanine.
That's the level of like transformation that's happening to our teachers. So an encouragement to parents and folks, if you know a teacher, like, reach out to them right now. They're stressed as hell and they're amazing human beings who are doing the impossible. Susan said it in her pre-interview form, which I have to say always, every time I get one of those back, thank you TL for letting us steal ideas, man. But she said it in her thing, we're building a plane while we're learning to fly it.
Yes. Yes.
That
Yes.
we have to move beyond simple substitutions for what wasn't working anyway in our damn classrooms and moving toward total transformation of education. Like, that's an amazing thing. Yeah.
It's good stuff, man.
Mm.
Well, thank you, my brother, as always, for holding the space. We thank all of our viewers, all of our listeners, all those people who chimed in on our live. Very much appreciate you guys just spending the time with us because we know there are a lot of other places that you can be. So please feel free to share if anyone needs to hear these type of conversations in a positive, reaffirming way. Please pass it on.
And especially positive and reaffirming and vulnerable, even when we disagree.
Yes, exactly. Because it's all about business. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Oh, he's got.
All right, man. All right. See you guys next week. Same time. All right.